I love you, but be so for real. The wellness industry, which is like a $2 billion industry, loves to sell us a miracle, one supplement, one drink, or one habit that's just gonna fix all of our anxiety, our sleep, our stress, addictions, basically our entire lives with one simple something. And I hate to break it to you, there's no single product that can solve your problems, but there are tools that can help you be more well rounded and become a part of a holistic toolkit. So, today we're talking with the current CEO of Calm with Kava, not as a miracle cure, but as one tool in a bigger conversation about stress, addiction, and coping with life in healthy ways. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me, India, and I'm stoked to talk about kava and how it might be able to help some folks, or like you said, just be a part of your sort of total wellness solution, right? As you said, kava is not going to fix your problems. Nothing will, except for the things that you do in your life to try to fix things, right? It's not a silver bullet, but something that can help maybe alleviate a couple things.
Exactly. So I want to start off with, for people who may not know, just learning about like the story behind you taking over Calm with Kava. So I know you took it over in 2020, but you have a deeper connection to it. What was happening in your life that made Kava specifically feel meaningful to you as a product?
Yeah, about 12 years ago, I was in a pretty big depression. I was in a big slump in life, and I was working 80-hour weeks. My beautiful wife and I just had our second child, and I was just dealing with the throes of life and trying to handle all of that. And it was a lot, right? For a young father dealing with all these different things and trying to pay the bills and make sure that the family's fed and that we have a roof over our heads. It's just a lot to deal with. And so I went to my doctor and I asked for some help, and I was prescribed some benzodiazepines and SSRIs. And the short story is, a couple days later, I went to my office and I was working, and I felt like an elephant was sitting on my chest. Right, I had a panic attack, and I was told to take a benzodiazepine from my doctor when that happened, and so I did, and I don't remember what I did the rest of the day. Like, blacked out, and I was taking coworkers to lunch, and I was doing all sorts of things that, making decisions that I should not have been making. So I came to, and I realized I needed to find an alternative, and kava was the one thing I tried out of 10 or 15 other things to find an alternative to those types of pharmaceuticals. So for me, they didn't work. They weren't something that really worked with my lifestyle. I needed to find something that would work and that wasn't going to turn me into like a zombie. So that's where kava
Yeah,
comes
because
in.
it sounds like it was like over, it was numbing, and your intent wasn't to numb, it was to help you get through those moments of stress or panic and anxiety.
Yeah, I needed to understand what my body was doing, right? Rather than like forget what was going on in my life or forget, like that those emotions existed. I needed to have something where I could work through those emotions and understand what's happening. Now, I mean, look, I deal with anxiety every single day. I deal with stress every single day, right? That has not gone away. What has gone away, though, is the feeling of not understanding what was happening to me, right? I needed to realize that when I feel that elephant sitting on my chest, it's not going to be forever, but it might take a day or two. And it happens to me at least a couple times a year. But I know that tomorrow is a new day, and I know that I have other mechanisms, like going for a walk or hanging out with my wife or playing video games with my son, or whatever it is that can kind of help distract me from those situations. And kava is kind of like the cherry on top. It's one of those things that can help me kind of take the issues of the day and bring them down a notch. But it's not the solution, right? It's just a part of all of those things that I do to relax.
And how did like your experience with one, the traditional pharmaceuticals, and then two, transitioning and finding kava shape the way you think about mental health today?
Well, I mean, look, I know that first off, I think that Western medicine is a good thing. My wife is a nurse, and my brother's a doctor, right? So I'm not some super hippie granola guy. Not that there's anything wrong with that, right? I think that like taking a holistic approach to things and realizing that traditional wellness that has been used for thousands of years, whether you're into Ayurvedic stuff from India or you're into more Eastern medicine from China or you're whatever it might be, there's good things all around, right? And so I think that the first message that I have for people is that there are alternatives and there are things that might be able to help you that aren't necessarily the traditional route. And so for me personally, I know now looking back on it that I needed something that was going to help me in the short term. I did not need something that was going to be something that was a long term. I have to be on this thing for, I have to be on this substance for a year or two before I'm able to kind of wean myself off, right? I didn't need that. I needed a month or two of something to help me get through my issues at the moment. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what I took from it is that I think a lot of people deal with that and they don't necessarily need a long term solution that could potentially pose long term health issues.
So basically, like it allowed you to actually understand what your needs were, instead of maybe like putting on like a one size fits all, this is what I'm going to give you. You were able to find like this is what works for me and what I need in this moment
Yeah,
in my life or time
exactly.
period in my life, whatever. And it could change. You never know. And I personally didn't know what kava was before getting to know about you and your story. So, can you explain like where did kava come from? Like, is it one of those ancient tools like Chinese medicine? Like, people still don't know a lot about what it is. So, could you explain it a
Yeah,
little?
it is an ancient tool. It is. It has 3,000 years of history. So 3,000 years of people like you and me, who have treated it in a very sacred, religious, ceremonious, and recreational way. It has I liken it to kind of like wine in that if you think of old Christian teachings way back in the day, you'd end up using wine for sacraments, but then you'd also have people drinking wine with their dinners at night, right? You can have it either ceremoniously and religiously, or you could have it recreationally. Same thing with kava, but it's been used for 3,000 years by people throughout Melanesia, where it originally started in places like Vanuatu or Fiji. And it migrated as a canoe crop from those islands eastward towards Hawaii, right? So all the countries in between, all the islands and countries in between there as well, Tonga and Samoa and the Marshall Islands and the Marquesa Islands, and eventually Hawaii is where it stopped. And so now we have 100 different varieties of kava because as people took cuttings of the kava to help repropagate it, reproduce it, it morphed over time, right? It has different islands that have different weather patterns, different types of soil, different humidity levels, different storms that are coming in. And so you have different morphing of the plant that changes its characteristics. And so cultures throughout the South Pacific have used it differently and have identified the plants that they prefer on those particular islands. So now we have a ton of different types that offer different experiences too.
Wow. That's actually something I didn't think about, the fact that like the way weather patterns and humidity and all those types of things can shape your experience with the kava. Um and then is it like most of the time like you get it in like a tea form, or is it, cuz I think of matcha when I think of ceremonial
Mm-hmm.
great things that are used for multiple purposes for years, I always think of matcha. So is it kind of like in that kind of form?
That's a really astute observation. I actually just got back from Japan last week and I was hanging out with these Buddhist monks who were doing these matcha ceremonies in the morning. And I saw incredible parallels there because you've got these folks that have been using this matcha for many, 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 many years, centuries, if not millennia. And the way in which they have reverence for the tea itself, and the way in which they have reverence for the people that they're making it for, the way that they'll prepare the matcha in a certain way. They'll give it to you not front facing with the teacup, and they have you move the cup sideways a couple different times, so that way it's like a respect thing for how they present the tea to you. It's very similar in many cultures throughout the South Pacific with how they approach it. Most of the time, they'll. I should. Okay, so before I really get into that, there are thousands of subcultures throughout the South Pacific. And so there's not one kava ceremony. There's not one way to drink kava. There's not one people that did this. But I can say pretty ubiquitously throughout the South Pacific, you have people that the very first thing they talk about when they have a kava ceremony is that they honor and respect their ancestors. They honor and respect the people that came before to bring them kava and to bring them all of their food and their life and all the good stuff, right? And then after that, it generally gets into, okay, what is the purpose and intent today of drinking kava? And many times it's to increase your relationships with people, either to create new rapport or to amend relationships that have been broken. Maybe it's a political deal. Maybe it's an issue with your neighbor next door. Maybe you want to marry the girl next door. You have all sorts of different reasons why you could be drinking kava together, but it always stems around building a good relationship. And so matcha is the perfect example of another culture that has another tea very similar to kava that helps create that relationship.
Yeah, I got into learning about matcha from like not just by like the taste to like the ceremonial aspect and the different things about it, because I've used it as a tool for my ADHD and sometimes anxiety. So when I heard about kava, I was like, I feel like it's a similar kind of thing where it's a little bit deeper than like, oh, I want to go to a party and I don't want to drink. It can be used for that, just like I use it to be like, oh, I want to get more work done. Like, it's not like for
Mm-hmm.
matcha, it can be used for that, but there's more historically things to consider about it, which I always think is cool when you understand the background of whatever you're consuming.
Yeah.
Um, People often lump kava together with CBD or kratom. Like, I just heard a commercial on like the radio in an Uber or something that was like kratom, kava, da 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 da. What are the biggest misconceptions about how kava actually works, and why do you feel like people are linking CBD and kratom to kava?
Yeah, it's one of the biggest misconceptions around kava. A lot of people will say, oh, well, I had kava and it made me addicted to it. Well, first off, kava does not cause any physical addiction. There's many studies about it. It does not create a tolerance. You could try it for years and years and years every single day, not have it the next day, and you will not experience any withdrawals. For example, I drink it often. I drink it 4, 5, maybe 6 nights in a week. Like I said, I just went to Japan. I didn't bring any kava with me. I I just didn't need it. I wasn't going to want it, and I knew that I wasn't going to need it, and my body didn't care, right? So I think that's the first thing, right? Is that people really have this idea that kava is going to make them get addicted to it, when in reality they're conflating it with something like kratom that has addictive potential, that operates off of the opioid pathways or receptors in the brain. Kava does not. Kava acts off the GABA receptors in the brain. GABA receptors, though, are very, they're used by tons of different substances out there. Alcohol uses them. Benzodiazepines use them. The difference, though, is that it does not create those tolerances that alcohol or benzodiazepines would create. So it's a little bit different, but it's also very similar, right? In a lot of those ways. I don't know if that answers your question.
It does, because so I think like with the receptors that opioids act on, it's like those have high rates of addiction. Um, I know there's like a very small percent of people, whether it was from taking it as prescribed or recreationally for opioids, that like will never have to do them again. Like, there's a lot of people have to do like the methanol after, like, it's known to be addictive, point blank period. Whereas like things that act on like the GABA receptors. Of course, there's alcohol where that's very addictive, but it's not like a surefire, like if it acts on this, you are going to get addicted. Whereas like with the opioids, it's like got high chances there. And I don't think so with kratom, the way that it's marketed, I didn't even know that it acted on those. They market it as this like new thing that's better than taking like NSAIDs, like ibuprofen. It's better for you, but in reality, it's not any better than taking an Advil or a Tylenol, which is pretty harmful in the marketing because the people who are trying to avoid maybe taking those are looking for something that's a little bit more holistic, and they believe that kratom may be something like that. And I think mixing in kava with a kratom product is harmful because you're not able to distinguish between what the two are doing to you,
Yeah.
whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. Even if kratom was all good, I would still say I don't think you should have them mixed in products that are marketed to the mass, because you need to know what does what.
Absolutely agree.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. I find it to be really off-putting and detrimental to kava and detrimental to the people that grow kava when it's conflated with products like kratom, because kratom is under fire all over the place. You look, every single like state has had something about kratom in its legislation recently. Huge amounts of money is being poured into that industry right now to try to defend it, and the reality of it is that kratom can create a lot of issues for people. Now look, like 15-year-old me was a libertarian, and I was like, yeah, everyone should be able to try whatever they want. And now as an adult, I don't know if that's true. I really don't. And I'm not here to be anti-kratom, right? I'm here to be pro-kava, right? I'm not an expert on kratom. I'm not a medical expert. I don't know how this stuff really works, right? I have no idea. All that I know is when people conflate kava with kratom, it's really sad because they're completely different plants. Kratom is a tree. You take the leaf, you grind it up, you make a tea out of it. Kava it's a shrub. You take the root of it, you make a tea out of that, right? Both of them start with K. Both of them come from other areas of the world that no one knows about. Both of them come from other cultures that no one knows about. And so it's very easy for someone like me or you who doesn't come from those parts of the world to not recognize the difference. And so I think that the real issue here is consumer education.
Yes.
So many people I see online, and it drives me crazy. They blame the people who are getting addicted to something rather than the substance, when we know
Right.
that addiction it has a huge genetic component that people do not have control over. That is just the reality of it. My grandfather's an alcoholic, right? My cousin died from an overdose of some nasty drugs, right? I understand the genetic component of it, and I think that a lot of people blame the human when in reality they don't. You should not have to have a medical degree to figure this stuff out, but you also just have to understand that most people are not going to really understand what they're putting into their bodies, because if you're a mechanic, you know about cars. If you're a plumber, you know about drains and pipes. You don't know about what this stuff is doing to your body. And if people are not being honest with their products and upfront with what the potential downsides could be, you're going to cause problems.
Exactly. I think that if you're not aware of what something is, all I know is like I've seen CBD kratom places all over the US. Like I see there's some down the street from me in Chicago. They're at gas stations. I didn't know what it was. I'm just not really personally an explorative person when it comes to drugs, because my grandfather did die of alcoholism and complications from it, and I have other family members who suffered from addiction. So I'm just not explorative. But if I'm 19, 20, 21, and I don't have that type of family trauma, maybe I go and I'm like, oh, well, it's right here. I can just, it's not like I'm buying it off the street. Like, what would be the harm in doing this? And if you're not educated on it, that, to your point, I think is an issue with consumer education. And I personally think it's on purpose because people are profiting from these things. Speaking of profit, I know that a lot of these smaller, tiny islands that a lot of us have never even heard of have a lot of their economy dependent on the growth and like selling of kava. What do you think the conflating and like the consumer miseducation does to impact those small farming countries?
It's huge. The impact is huge. So Vanuatu is where kava first started. It was where it was first domesticated. It's an invention of the people of Vanuatu. That is what kava is. Without those people, we would not have it today because it doesn't have seeds. It does not reproduce on its own. So it requires people to do that. And those same people have been farming it for 3,000 years. And those same people are using kava as a way to get themselves out of economic slumps. The country of Vanuatu, over 55% of its GDP comes from kava exports. If they don't have kava to sell, that entire country goes under. That's what that means. So when there's a potential for conflation between kava and something else that could bring kava down with it in some sort of regulatory or legislative issue where people cannot sell kava here anymore, that means that thousands of families throughout the South Pacific, if not hundreds of thousands, are going to be genuinely affected by that, right? So now, luckily, in a lot of ways, they treat money in a very different way than you or I do. They're subsistence farmers. The vast majority of people will have 10, 15, 20 plants in their backyard. And when they need something, they'll sell a plant. They use it like a bank account, right? So if they have to send their kids to school, they need to pay tuition, they need to buy a school uniform. Maybe they need to, get building supplies, some concrete to make a new home or something like that. They'll sell a couple plants, right? But that's all that they got. Other than that, they plant everything and they have animals in their backyard. And, I'll tell you a funny story. I went to a pretty remote island in Vanuatu where I met this guy who had a big giant field, and that was one of his 5 or 6 fields of kava. It was huge. I mean, it was so far that it was kind of like unbelievable I don't know. I have no idea how many plants were in that field. But I joked with him and I said, wow, these are some beautiful plants. Can I buy them? And he looked at me and he didn't realize I was joking. He just looked at me straight face. He goes, no. I thought, that's a little weird. I feel like if it was in the US and a buyer came to my farm and they were like, hey, I'm going to buy all of your product right now. What can I, what?
Yes.
Exactly, right? I'd be like, this is my payday. I got this guy. No, he didn't care about the money. He was like, nah, this is my kava. I'm going to drink it. I'm going to hang out with my family.
Sustenance. Like, this is for
Yes.
me and my family. Yeah.
Yeah. He didn't need the money. He didn't want the money. He was just like, no, this is mine.
It like makes you think about kind of a tangent, like, but how they say like once you hit a certain income level in the US, your happiness does not go up with more money that you make. Like once you hit, I think it's like 70,000. It's probably higher now because of inflation. But it used to be 70,000. Your happiness is not gonna go up once you make more than that, which is, it kind of goes to show he's like, he could have made, if you were serious, he could have made a lot of money on this dumb American who's coming just to buy stuff, but that wasn't like where his value system was.
Not at all. Yeah.
But
that's not to say that people don't, again, though, people use kava as their bank account. So they do need money. It's just they don't need it as much or as often or as in large quantities as you or I do.
Yes, exactly. It's like more intentional versus like here it's like, I don't know, where I don't even want to say it's materialistic because a lot of people are just getting by, but we just need money more. We don't have, most people are living in apartments in cities and don't have a garden, don't have the space, honestly, to be self-sufficient or be able to do the things that they're doing there. So
Exactly.
It's just a whole different lifestyle. Now back to like wellness alternatives and like versus substance culture. we're seeing more people right now. They say like Gen Z is replacing alcohol with other substances and alternatives. Why do you think that shift is happening right now?
Well, look, we've talked about it already, right? We both have grandparents who have had addiction issues. We've both had friends who have fallen into, these addiction problems. And I say both. And now I don't know your background. I don't know your family. I don't know your friends. But the reason I say both of us have that is because everyone knows someone who has fallen into those pits, right? Everyone.
Correct.
There is not a single person, I believe, there's not a single person that does not have a family member or a friend who has been affected by some form of addiction. And personally, as a guy who was raised in a very religious household, that was like the number one thing for me is that I appreciate growing up is that was a value instilled in me that, hey, we don't do that stuff, and we're going to make the decision now that we're not going to fall into these traps that a lot of other people take. And I'm grateful for that education as a young kid because it's really set me up for a fantastic life. And I think that when you have younger generations seeing older generations fall into these issues over and over and over again, you got to think at some point people go, all right, I don't really want to do that, right? Like my wife, like I said, she's a nurse, right? She comes home every single night that she's on a shift and she goes, I just this 30-year-old guy just died, that he had alcohol poisoning or he had this or whatever it is, right? This she can't give me details because of HIPAA laws, right? But what she says is, I had this patient, he was super young. He was just on all sorts of nasty stuff, amputated his leg and right? Whatever it might be. It was just like, how far do you really want to take this over and over and over again? How many generations of people do we have to see get screwed up before we change? And I think that that's what we're seeing, right? And also on the other side of it, it's okay. Well, now that we've seen our parents do this and previous generations do this, what's our option? Well, today there's more options than ever before for ways to not drink or ways to not, get on some really nasty, harder stuff, right? So we actually have options. Kava is one of those options that has really only been available in the US for maybe the last 15 years, 20 years, maybe. And so it just never was really a particularly good option. And so now we have a lot of options. And I think Gen Z is seeing that and recognizes that something needs to change.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I said a little bit earlier was like some of it I think is intentional because of how much money the alcohol industry makes and how much of the world, quite honestly, is controlled by the alcohol industry. So if people are having more options like kava available to them, accessible, they know where to get it, all those things, they would make, to your point, eventually people make different decisions. And what does that lead to? Less money for the alcohol companies. So I do think some of it is intentional, which is why like consumer education and like spreading the word and understanding of like, yes, we understand that maybe you want to take the edge off, maybe you do have anxiety, and like telling people like where your options actually do exist, because the mainstream is not going to necessarily tell you about the other options. And then I know we've talked about like how it's not going to just, if you are an alcoholic or if you're addicted to opioids, like kava is not going to be like, oh, I just start taking kava and now I'm not addicted. Um, and an important part of your story is how you lost your friend who founded the company. How does his story highlight the dangers of looking for like a one tool fits all, cures all mentality?
Yeah. So thanks for bringing him up. His name was Mike. And for whomever's watching a video, this is Mike. I keep a picture of him around all the time. This is him in his kava fields in Hawaii. And at my office, I'm at home right now, but at my office, I have a big picture of him behind my desk, and
Mm.
I always have a what would Mike do moment pretty routinely about how do we treat people and how do we do business, and what was his value system, and that's really super important to me. Mike, he passed away in 2020, and he had just such he was like my kava guru. He was the guy that knew everything about the plant. He knew all the people. He knew all the pharmacology. He knew all the different things about kava that I just didn't quite know yet, right? And so I always kind of looked to him for all of my answers, right? And so when I lost him, because when he passed away, it was just like, well, what now? Like, how do I move forward? How do I kind of deal with that? And it's important that we talk about Mike, because he passed away by suicide, and it ruined me. It really hurt his family. His wife, she's dealing with all sorts of different, chronic health issues, and that should not be something that anyone deals with. And the thing that I think is very important is that people recognize that Mike owned a kava company, right? If kava could help with all of these different issues that he was going through, he would still be here, right? I'm sure that it alleviated some of his problems, but the reality of it is that the problems that we have are internal. They cannot be fixed by a substance. They will not be fixed by a substance. I don't care what it is. I don't care what a doctor says. I don't care what your friend next door says about, something. Oh, this is the pill you should be taking. That's not the deal. That's not how this works. How this works is you need to work on what's going on inside, and you need to think about what's happening to you. Kava is a tool that can help you deal with some of these things. It can kind of help you kind of take the edge off so that you can work through these issues. And it's not going to numb your pain. You're not going to forget about what's going on. You're not going to be like completely ignoring the rest of your life, right? To me, when I prepare my kava at night, it helps me sort of get into some sort of like a meditation session where I'm thinking to myself, all right, I don't have a podcast on, I don't have the TV on. It's just me and the bowl, and I'm preparing my kava, and it's a couple of minutes to think about, how did today go? How is tomorrow going to go? What are the things I need to do? What are the things I need to worry about? And then once I've got all that kind of re-indexed in my brain, the kava can just kind of help me slow down, right? And so I think that that's the number one message, is that it's not going to fix you. It did not fix Mike, and it won't fix you, but it can create some sort of an effect in your life where you might be able to work through those issues, fully aware of what's going on and not numbing your entire mind.
Because at the end of the day, and thank you for sharing that, like at the end of the day, like if you numb what's going on, you're not dealing with what's going on, to your point. And if you don't deal with it, it will only fester and fester. Um, and we all need tools to help us deal with whatever we have. We all have something, right? They talk about like a big T trauma and a little T trauma. We all have like a little T trauma, even if it was like my parent always gave my sibling other attention because he was good at spelling, but they were giving me attention too. I just felt dumb because he was good at spelling. That's,
Hmm.
even though your parents were amazing parents and did nothing wrong, that's still a little T trauma that maybe you have to work through. And we all have that, right? And sometimes some of us need more tools to help navigate that, but that doesn't mean that we're not addressing it and that we're not going to do the work. Even when I think about like pharmaceuticals, because I take a stimulant, I have ADHD prescribed, and my experience taking it as someone who was diagnosed as an adult, so I already had a bunch of tools that I had in my toolkit of how do I navigate low dopamine days, how do I navigate brain fog, what do I do? It helps me a lot because I have all these other tools that I use, including matcha as well, to facilitate, like, okay, this is how I deal with my ADHD. But if I just was taking it, maybe if I got diagnosed at 10 years old and I was just taking it, didn't have other tools in my toolkit, I probably, a lot of people I know who started taking it as a kid, they're like, I didn't like it. I didn't like how I felt. It didn't do anything. I don't do anything now. I don't take anything now. And they also don't work through it. So I don't think, like, we're not saying like tools aren't useful. We're saying like be aware that even someone like Mike, who had a really wonderful tool in Kava and was super educated on it, because he was not working through maybe some other things he needed to work through, he still suffered in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You can't run away from your problems. They always catch up, you know? And, it's hard because you can't like, I don't know. Over the years, I've felt so many different emotions with, I suppose, the grief of that experience. And you know, you don't want to blame the person, but you also have to go, well, there's some personal accountability there. You have to have some, right? And the other part though is that I can't judge him. I don't know what he was going through. I don't know what was going on in his brain. I don't know what he could have done, right? I really empathize with people who have gone through that, or people who have had close relationships with people who have gone through that, because it's so unknowing, and we try to like create some logic around like why they did what they did. And could I have done something different? And I don't know that you could have. I don't know if I could have. I recount, I got a call from him on a Wednesday, and it was a Wednesday night, and I was just sitting down to dinner with my family, and I saw that he had called, and I ignored it because I thought, okay, I'm going to call him later. He's calling in the middle of my family dinner. Like I can't. I need to hang out with my kids, right? And come to find out, he passed away on that Friday, 2 days later. And so for years, I thought, had I answered the phone, would that have changed? Probably not. Probably not.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, at first, I thought, I screwed up. If I answered the call, he would have been in a better mindset. He would have done that. He would have felt better. He would have had all these great ideas and projects that we were going to work on together. I don't know if that's true at all, right? But what I can tell you is, personally, all of those years of dealing with this, understanding my own anxieties, my own stresses, and creating ways to manage those issues every single day and those panic attacks, how do I deal with that? That's helped me a lot. Could that have helped Mike? Maybe. I don't know. But all that I know is that Kava and anything else is not the solution. The solution is inside of us.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I think because I experienced that kind of loss young, like right after I finished high school. And I think you always do go back to like, well, what if this? And specifically, the person that I lost, his name was Daniel. He was, when we were in high school, I saw him try different things like, oh, I'm going to do a raw foods diet, or I'm going to do this. And I think it's because what's marketed is like, if you just do this one thing and you do it perfect, then you will feel better. Just this one thing perfectly. And it's like, no, it's finding things that help and not doing them perfectly. Like, you didn't have kava, to your point, you didn't have kava with you when you were in Japan. You may had to use other tools. Maybe you did yoga, maybe you meditated, maybe you were having the matcha with the monks. Like, you had other tools, but it's finding a bunch of tools that when used consistently or as needed make you feel better. And I think that's kind of like, honestly, one of the things that like was a shame for my friend is like the marketing and like, you will feel better with this one thing, and then he tries to be like so perfect with that one thing, and it never was just going to be that one thing. It's always going to be like a whole journey of work of things that come together.
Yeah,
um
and if that one thing doesn't work, well, I guess I'm broken and I'm never going to feel better again.
right.
And that's wrong,
Exactly.
man. Like that's the number one thing when you. I'm not a super religious guy, but the one thing that really rings true with Buddhism to me is the idea of impermanence, meaning that nothing is permanent. Right? Every day something is going to change. I got water in my cup right now. Well, tomorrow that water is going to be a little bit lower because it's going up into the air and it's dehydrating a little bit. My ice is going to turn into water. I had hair yesterday. I lost it all. Oh no, right? It's all gone now, right? Today I feel happy. Tomorrow I'll feel sad. The next day I might feel happy again. It's just the idea that nothing is going to stay the same. And so if you're feeling one way today, tomorrow is a completely different day. And you just have to remember that because that is like the number one thing. You just have to know today will not be tomorrow, ever, ever.
That was the biggest thing I took from Buddhism too, actually. I remember like when I learned it in high school and they were teaching us about like all the different cultures and stuff. And I remember when they wrote it down, like change is the only thing that you can rely on is change. Like change is the only thing that you know is going to happen. And it stuck with me so much because as a high school, I definitely had like a lot of anxiety. And now looking back, now that I've had my diagnoses and stuff, I'm like, okay, it was probably because I had ADHD and I was like anxious because I wasn't getting support. I didn't have any tools, but I had a lot of anxiety. And I remember I would always think, okay, well, this is like a point in time. This is a moment. They've been saying this for thousands and thousands of years. It must be, it must be true. So yeah, I think that in thinking about that too is like to your point, if one thing doesn't work and you think like I'm broken because this one thing doesn't work, it's gonna make you more depressed. It's gonna make you more sick in whatever kind of sick, whether it's physical, mental, or a mix of both. It's not, it's gonna make you feel worse. And it's just about learning what to incorporate and being aware of what's happening in your body and like what you need. Like when you spoke about your kava routine at night, I thought about how when I take a yoga class, my favorite thing is at the end, the final shavasana, it's like it's silent and that's when like my brain is calibrating. It's like, oh, I want to have this conversation with this person and now I know how I want to say it. Like things start coming to my brain and we all should have like different ways that we're able to work through what it doesn't change what happened in that day. I'm not numb. I haven't even taken anything. I'm not numb, but it's like I'm able to see clearer. Um and then we've talked a lot so much about how like it's one piece of the pie, there's many pieces of a pie. What does the toolkit look like for you now?
Great question. So right now, when I mean, every single day I'm hanging out with my family, right? I think that that's the first thing, right? Our relationships are the things that keep us really going. I'm a father. I like to hang out with my kids. I like to, mess around with my son in games and my daughter, she's a teenage girl who likes to hang out in her room. And so when I come home and I look and see her door closed, I'm knocking on the door and walking in there and hanging out with her for a few minutes. She might hate it, right? But she might hate it for like 3 minutes, but after the fourth minute, she seems to like me hanging around a little bit, right? And so I like to mess with her and bother her a little bit, you know what I mean? And that's always fun. And then I like to go on walks with my wife, go take the dogs out for a walk, and then I try to stay really busy. I heard an NPR thing a while ago. It was about a study that was around anxiety, and they said that there was a study with two groups of people, two different sort of methods for dealing with anxiety. And one method was to ruminate on the issue, right? So, okay, ruminate meaning I'm going to just continue thinking about my anxiety. How am I going to fix this? What am I going to do? How am I? Oh no, I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking about that. And then there was a second group that was trying to find distractions. Okay, I'm going to find a hobby. I'm going to go do this, and I'm going to just forget that the anxiety even existed because now I'm going to do whatever it is, right? I'm going to go ride my bike, or I'm going to go start learning how to climb mountains or something like that. And the study found that the people that were distracted, the distraction group fared far better. And I've used that ever since because I just find that to also work for me. So I do like to play games. I like to hang out with the family. I like to do all these different things. And so I like to find a lot of distractions like that. And then, like I said earlier, the cherry on top is after I've done all those things, right? After the foundations have been laid, that's when at the end of the night, when the house is quiet and the kids are asleep and my wife is watching some TV show that I would rather die than watch, I will go and prepare my kava. And I will, put some kava in a strainer, put some water in that bowl, and then I'll just massage that bag of kava. That's how you make it traditionally. And I'll sit there for 5-10 minutes preparing my kava while I'm thinking about what happened that day. And then when I finally consume that kava, I can now really relax. And I don't have all these crazy racing thoughts. I don't have all these, what am I gonna do today, right? It's just, okay, now I can finally take a deep breath and kind of just embrace the moment and deal with whatever comes. So that's my usual routine.
I love that. Does she like reality TV? Is that
Of
what you're
course.
like? I'm like, yeah, I can relate.
Absolute
That's
trash.
my nighttime ritual. Then my skincare. But I'm like, yes. I'm like, I feel like I know what she's watching.
Bro, if she was in the room right now, she'd be like, well, what do you like to watch? Let's talk about it.
Literally. I'm like, I already could. I'm like, yeah. And then this person did that. What did you think of that? Did you see the reunion? Yep.
Dude, I can't handle it. All that stuff stresses me out. I don't know how I'm just seeing all these people like argue and like fight and stuff. And I'm like, how is this relaxing at all?
You
But
know
it
what it
is to her.
is that like it's so ridiculous that you feel good.
Yeah,
Like
you feel better about yourself. Like,
you're
wow,
like, yeah,
I'm not screwed up.
whoa, like they got that going on and it doesn't feel like connected to you. Whereas like I love documentaries, but I don't watch them to relax because it's like they hit close to home. You're like, oh, that
Sure,
could be
sure.
me. Like kids are starving. Like I could have been like it feels more like, oh my gosh, like I could relate to this or someone I know could relate to this. But reality TV, you're like, this is bogus. They're doing this to themselves. So it's disconnected in a way that makes you feel relief. Um
I'm
but
glad you enjoy it.
it's one of my tools. That's one of my tools. It's reality TV. And then if someone is struggling with something like stress, anxiety, or they're using other tools to like maybe maintain their sobriety, where do you think kava should fit into their bigger picture? How could they start incorporating it as a beginner or someone new to it?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different types of kava. Earlier we were talking about there's 100 different varieties of kava, and they all have some sedative qualities and some euphoric qualities and everything in between, right? And so I think the first thing that I would say is that if you're interested in it, if you're interested in kind of like just experiencing that sort of just chill, I just need to just melt into the couch a little bit, I would get a couple different varieties to try out, right? So ones from Vanuatu will be more sedative. You drink it late at night, it'll help you really kind of chill out. Ones from maybe like Tonga or Hawaii, they're going to be a little bit more euphoric. They're going to be a little bit more like maybe good for social situations, so you can have the type of kava for the situation that you're looking to kind of deal with. And so that's the thing I would recommend is get a couple different types because not one kava is the same as another kava. They're all very different. A lot of people, if you look at like studies out there, you look at research, they look at it from a very Western mindset where they go like, Piper methysticum is the Latin name of kava. Piper meaning pepper, so like it's a part of the pepper family, and it's kind of got like a very earthy, sort of like almost spicy undertone. But they I don't know why I brought that up. That's completely left field. Anyways, the reason I brought that a part of that up is because the science only says Piper methysticum does this or that. It doesn't say this variety does this or this variety does that. And so they haven't really caught up to that. Different types of kava make you feel different ways. And so just understand that. There's not a one-size-fits-all situation there.
Okay. So be curious,
Yes.
try, try something different, pay attention to your body
Yeah,
and how you
exactly.
react. And then last question, what do you wish the wellness industry, $2 billion industry, would be more honest about?
I wish it would be more honest about a lot of things. I think number one is transparency around sourcing. I think that when you have an industry that's dedicated on trying to better yourself, I think that there's a lot of energy out there in the world, and the energy could be good or it could be bad. But it ends up kind of, going into certain parts of your life. And I think that if you are ingesting something that comes from a place of some, I don't know, that isn't being honest, I think that you feel that. I think that that really is something that comes through without you really realizing it. And so I would say that transparency around sourcing, honesty in marketing, being, and I don't know how to even do that, to be honest with you, because it's the Wild West, right? In the U.S., a lot of wellness companies can say all sorts of different things, and it takes a while for the FDA to catch up. They will catch up, but that means that there's a couple of years of harmful marketing and predatory practices. So I would say that, really understand what your customers are actually needing rather than trying to sell them on something. If you have to market something that hard, it's probably not a good product.
Mm-hmm. Or like manipulate the perception or whatever, or over exaggerate, then maybe you need to take a look in the mirror about what the product is and who you're trying to sell it to.
Yes, consumers do not need 95% of the products out there. You're being misled.
Correct. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. Honestly, not even just with wellness stuff, anything. Anything. A lot of it is like marketing that made you feel like you needed that or that it would help with this. And placebos are real too, but that's like a whole other thing. Is like you think something's working, but really it could be that like you just got more of a routine because now you wake up to take this, or now you wake up to, like, it could be, yeah, that's a whole big thing. But I think like the biggest thing we've learned from this conversation is like wellness isn't about finding like one thing that fixes everything, but it's not about buying a bunch of things and like seeing what sticks. It's about building an intentional toolkit and being honest about what each tool can and can't do. So thank you for joining. I will put all of your information in the description. And I want to tell everyone, like, subscribe, follow for more interviews like this, more content like this at I Love You But Podcast, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Spotify, all the places. I Love You But Podcast. And thank you so much for joining us for such an informative conversation.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.